The night before applications closed, our class group chat turned into a bonfire. Emojis flew like sparks, screenshots bled into arguments, and somewhere under all the noise, my name kept glowing. Lila. Relax. Arman has my account and password. Lila. If he notices I switch to South City, he'll follow. He always does. Mechanical keys clattered through her mic. Game sounds, a victory chime. The weightless laugh she always used when she didn't want to carry the truth out loud. The laugh was a match. The chat was tinder. My chest caught fire and went still at the same time. I stared at the blue light on my desk until it looked like water. The studio was a mess of charcoal dust and taped-up studies. Hands, rooftops, night buses. My mug had a rind of cold coffee around its lip like a bad habit. In the window, Beijing's ghost, neon fog, headlights, a siren smearing itself across the glass. Someone. Weren't you two applying to CAFA together? Lila. We were. It's fine. He checks the portal 800 times a day. Someone else. Shouldn't you tell him? Lila. Too much hassle. Mac. She bit the name off, then pushed through. South suits me more. Warm, new campus. New light. There it was. The missing syllable that had been haunting the edges of our year. A boy whose name tasted like a secret. Not mine. Password, I said out loud. And my voice sounded like a stone skipping once and dropping. The laugh from the chat turned into a chorus. I watched the bubbles stack until it felt like I was drowning under a cheap cartoon sky. I did what I always do when I can't breathe. I opened my father's old folder. The vellum sleeves were yellow at the corners where our hands had worried them over the years. My father's pencil lines were still steady, even in copies. A roofline at the National Center for the Performing Arts, a notation about winter light, a sketch of the Great Hall at CAFA that looked like a ribcage, like shelter. When I was 12, he took me there and stood me under a skylight. See how the light doesn't beg to be noticed? He'd said. It just arrives and does its work. After he died, I came alone and stood there with my palms braced against my backpack straps, pretending the ache in my throat was gratitude. I told myself I would become the kind of person who could build quiet shelters in noisy cities. That was my password. Not a string of characters. Not even a vow to a girl. I closed the chat. I closed everything. The room sighed. On my wall, an old photo. Lila and me in plastic ponchos on a rooftop. Rain punching through the city. Paint drying on our faces in streaks that made us look like we were already statues of ourselves. That night, after the camp showcase, our mouths accidentally collided in a corner that smelled like turpentine and thunderstorms. We stepped back with ruined lipstick and a shared, ridiculous grin. She'd said, "We're idiots." I'd said, "Probably." Then we'd pretended it never happened. Maybe pretending had been the point all along. The application portal sat open, the cursor blinking like a pulse. Capital Academy of Fine Arts, Department of Design. The checkbox next to it glowed, ticked. I moved the mouse to the little X in the corner of the South City tab I'd opened weeks ago when Lila first started saying maybe warm would be better. Maybe winter is hard, maybe the new studios are prettier. Click, X gone. I wrote an email to myself I didn't send. Subject, don't chase heat, chase light. Body, she has your password, but she never had your purpose. Hold. I shut the laptop. The darkness felt like a clean page. Somewhere below my window, a delivery guy leaned on his horn twice. And a couple argued rapidly about dumplings. And the city breathed the way it always does, without asking anyone's permission. My phone lit up again. Lila, video, incoming. Reflex is a religion. My thumb accepted before my mind could vote. She was backlit by someone else's living room, a couch I'd never sat on, a boy's sweatshirt thrown across the arm. Her hair was up in the loose way that meant she was exhausted but pretending it was a choice. Arman, hurry, she said. Hot pot, everyone's here. Don't be dramatic tonight, okay? Dramatic, I repeated, like I was rolling a marble over my tongue. She squinted. What? Behind her a voice slid into the frame. Lower, careful. Lila, should I put the mushrooms in? Or does Arman hate mushrooms? I don't want to ruin his night. He chuckled like a man rehearsing being considerate. Lila's mouth tightened. Kian, just hold on. Then to me, please don't sulk. If you wanted me to tell you first, I'm sorry. I thought you knew. You always know. There was a pang I couldn't place, like a small animal striking the bars of its cage twice and going still. Grace, maybe. Or the last soft thing you offer a door before you lock it. I do know, I said. Good night, Lila. Arman. I hung up. Then, because I am a human male with a brain that loves its own traps, I stared at the blank screen until the ghost of her face resolved into my reflection. My mom knocked once and opened the door the way only mothers can, with a plate of cut fruit and a decision already made in their faces. "It's late," she said. "Eat, sleep. Tomorrow you go sign the paperwork at school." I nodded. She put the plate down next to my father's folder and rested her hand on the cardboard for a breath. He'd be proud. Not because of where, because of why. "I know," I said. It came out sandpaper. When she'd gone, I lay down on the floor instead of the bed, because the floor forgives you for being a mess. The city hummed into my bones, the radiator ticked, the clock marched. At one point I got up, opened the laptop again, and checked the portal only to make sure the box was still ticked. It was. At 1:07 a.m., someone in the group chat dropped a photo of the bar they were at. Neon cursive. A wall of bottles like a stained glass window. For the future, we weren't old enough to drink yet. Another photo. Lila laughing, chin tipped up. Someone's shoulder in the frame. Kian. To new maps. Lila. To warm light. I threw my phone onto the bed and missed. It hit the floor and didn't crack. My luck is like that, stupid and loyal. "Okay," I said to no one. "Okay." I showered with the water as hot as it would go and scrubbed charcoal off my skin like regret. I put on a clean t-shirt I didn't hate. I stood in front of the mirror and tried to see past my face to the scaffold underneath. The boy who used to trace building shadows with his finger on the bus window and imagine which crossbeams were carrying whose weight. When I lay down again, I closed my eyes on purpose. Sleep came like it owed me money and was paying in small coins. I dreamed I was under the Kaffa skylight again. The light arrived and did its work. When I woke, my pillowcase was damp, and I pretended it was condensation. By noon, the chat had moved on to jokes about who would get eaten by roommates, and which city had better street food, and which boy's jacket had accidentally migrated to whose house. I scrolled without reading and then stopped scrolling at a photo that made my stomach throw a punch. Lila's hand in a man's. No faces, just fingers, the kind of shot meant to look like a slip and calculated to make everyone imagine the rest. I put the phone down. I made tea. I signed the school document. I stared out the window at a city I had chosen without asking it to love me back. I had not followed Lila. I had followed the light. That afternoon, David tripped into the studio in the way he always did, like gravity was a rumor, and flung himself into the chair next to mine. "You see the chat?" he said. "They're at Blue Lantern tonight. Big crowd. You coming? I have paperwork tomorrow. Exactly why you should come. Last night as idiots together. Then we'll go be idiots separately." I rubbed my thumb over a dried line of white paint on my desk and realized my hands were steady. "Fine," I said. 1 hour. Blue Lantern was exactly the color it promised. Everything dipped in a neon bruise. Smoke machines trying to pretend anyone needed fog to feel lost. David disappeared halfway to the table because a girl with glitter on her eyelids said his name like a dare. I found the booth by the laughter. Lila's eyes hit me like a thrown stone, bounced off, and pretended they hadn't meant to. Kian shifted a little so she could fit between him and the cushion. My spot. No one said the word. Arman. Someone who wasn't her said, "We're doing toast roulette. Pick a glass, pick a fate." "Water," I said. I lifted it and drank and the table booed like a sitcom. Fine. The night moved in cuts. A bass line crawling up my spine. Someone shouting into my ear, Lila's profile backlit by blue. Kian's hand hovering near her waist, like a question he didn't need her to answer out loud. Time got weird around 10 p.m., the way it does when you're pretending to have fun while you catalog evidence. And then, of course, someone yelled truth or dare, because we were young and terrible and too honest for our own good only when we were being watched. "Dare," Kian said. Like he was born for stages. The girl with the glitter smiled a villain's smile. "Slow dance," she said, "with someone who could break you." The DJ, who understood theater, slid the volume down and slid a synth line in that made the room soft at the edges. Kian stood. He turned. His eyes found Lila's like a magnet had been embedded under the floor. She looked at me. A 3-year conversation happened in a quarter of a second. She tilted her chin like a coin toss, and then she stood. And then the room clapped like they'd been waiting to. It wasn't obscene. That would have been gentler. It was the exact dance you teach a camera. Hands, near misses, the almosts that are more intimate than the collisions. At some point, her mouth did the thing it does when she's trying not to laugh. And then he stepped in and she didn't step back. And someone whistled and a phone flashed and my chest did something unpoetic and biological. My water tasted like nothing. I did not look away. Maybe pride. Maybe I wanted to learn the shape of the hurt so I would recognize it later in other rooms and have a name ready. When the track ended, he pretended to stumble. Because the gods of choreography demand a button. She reached out. He folded her in like a secret he intended to keep. The table exploded. The rest of the night was a smear. At the curb, David swore loyalty into the cold air and shoved a bottle of water into my hand and told me I had a jawline and a future. I said thank you and meant it and didn't know what to do with any of it. Back in my room, the city had gone quieter, except for the part of it that lives in phones. I turned mine face down. It buzzed anyway. Unknown. Don't be mad. Check the portal and fix it. South is better for you. Warm. I'll take you to draw the ocean. Unknown again. Arman. Answer. Be good. I blocked the number because mercy is a kind of violence sometimes, and I needed to aim it at myself. I set my alarm for too early and slept anyway. In the morning, the chat had a screenshot from 3 a.m. A hotel room. A bed made to look unmade on purpose. A girl's hair on a pillow not hers. A caption that wanted to sound like poetry and landed like a confession. 99 steps were worth her one step back. I didn't need faces. The ring on Lila's middle finger was an old, stupid thing we'd bought at a thrift shop sophomore year. The camera had caught the edge of it near the corner of the frame. That was the point. Proof disguised as accident. Desire disguised as fate. I could have thrown my phone into the sink. Instead, I set it down on the desk with the care you reserve for objects that have already hurt you enough. Then I picked up my father's folder. When I stepped outside, the wind came around the corner of the building with a knife between its teeth. I pulled my jacket close and walked toward the bus stop, toward the office that would stamp a paper that would put me under that skylight for real. My breath made a white flag in the air. I did not look back. If I had, I might have seen her on the opposite sidewalk, half a step out of a taxi, hair unbrushed, eyes stubborn, holding a paper bag from the pastry shop I pretended I didn't love. But I didn't. Some part of you has to stay dumb if you want to grow up. I got on the bus. It sighed and shouldered its way into the morning traffic. The city opened its mouth to swallow me and I let it. I went to sign my name where it mattered. I chose winter. I chose light. And for the first time since we were kids, stealing paint water sips and laughing like we were owed forever. I did not follow Lila anywhere at all. It's funny what the body remembers. Weeks later, I could still hear the way the bass had made the glassware talk to itself on the shelf. How the room gulped when Kian pulled Lila in. The specific pitch of the crowd's cheer when a secret stops being a secret and starts being a story. I didn't bring any of that to the studio with me the next afternoon, but I recognized it when it arrived anyway. Voices taking the corners too fast. The tone of laughter that wants an audience. The way people look at you when they're not sure if you've read the same post they did at 3 in the morning. The homeroom teacher did her best impression of a fast-forward button. Last checks. Last questions. Don't miss the deadline because you want it to be poetic. Poetry is for after paperwork. She smiled in the direction of the class like a lighthouse, and then was gone, swept away by her own list. I sat. The seat next to mine, the seat that had always been Lila's even when she wasn't in it, was occupied. Kian's knees were a geometry problem, all long angles and artfully ripped denim. He was twirling one of Lila's paintbrushes between his fingers as if it belonged to him. She leaned over his screen, their heads almost touching. Their focus a small, bright flame I had spent years keeping alive with the oxygen of my patience. I pulled my chair out as quietly as a person can who suddenly wants to be a thunderclap. David popped his gum like artillery and handed me a candy. "Emergency sugar," he said. "You're doing the thing with your jaw." "What thing?" "The thing where you pretend it doesn't hurt. I have known your face since it was a circle. Don't lie to me." "I'm fine," I said, and my voice did not wobble. And that victory wasn't small. I was about to ask him if he'd sent the file he'd promised to the portfolio coach when a hand touched the back of my head, like swiping a credit card. "Outside," Lila said. I looked up at her palm in the air where my hair would have been if I had not moved. I looked at her face in the fluorescent light, which made even the most beautiful people look like they were being interrogated by an angel. I looked at the way Kian didn't look at me at all, like I was a hallway he didn't plan to use. "I'm busy," I said. She blinked. I could almost see the math on her eyelids. Inputs, outputs, how many seconds it usually took to get what she wanted. "Arman, don't what? Don't be childish." David inhaled so hard he almost ate his gum. I put my hand out without looking, and he put the candy in it like we were a pit crew. I unwrapped it. I did not stand. Lila's jaw went tight. She lowered her voice. I stayed up half the night fixing his submission because the platform kept timing out. I forgot to remind you to recheck yours this morning. That's why I'm here. Not because I want a scene. You fixed his, I said calmly. You forgot me. Her nostrils flared in a way that would have been cute if I were still 18 in the ways that count. Don't make this about pride. It's logistics. I know you rush. You miss a line. You get angry at yourself later and pretend you're angry at the universe. Just go check. She reached toward my hair again without thinking and stopped when I flinched. For a fraction of a second, her eyes did something raw and startled, like an animal recognizing itself in a window at night. Then Kian lifted the tablet slightly, and the moment folded in on itself. Lila, he said, smooth as a marble countertop. The portfolio upload page finally loaded. I'm coming. She didn't look at me when she said it. Her shoulder brushed mine when she pivoted, and I felt nothing. I clung to the nothing like a raft. When they were 3 desks away, David leaned close. I want to flip that table so bad. Don't, I said. It'll ruin the brushes. We lasted 15 minutes before someone suggested a break. A birthday. A bar I had already seen from the inside. A promise that this time would be different, because names on forms make you new. David squeaked his chair out like a violinist lifting a bow. Come, he said. Your face needs air. My face needs a new face. That too. We'll get you a haircut on the way. We didn't. But the joke was a bridge to the street, where the air smelled like rain pitied the city and changed its mind. Halfway to Blue Lantern, my phone buzzed with a new number and a message as familiar as prayer. Unknown. Don't avoid me. If you're angry, say it. We're going to the same place anyway. I didn't answer because sometimes silence is the only sentence that doesn't lie. We ducked under the neon sign as if it were weather and fell into a booth that had seen better decisions than ours. It took 10 minutes for the party to congeal around us. Lila arrived with her hair down like an argument she was tired of having. Kian arrived with his shirt open 1 extra button like a thesis statement. The music was louder than the conversation we weren't having. Games were invented. Stupid ones. Stupidity is an anesthetic when used correctly. Truth, someone said to me, pointing like a prosecutor. Do you love Lila? The room pulled in. Even the bartender looked up. I laughed. It didn't sound like me and it still felt like relief. No, I said. Then I amended, because accuracy is a religion, not the version of her that needs me to be a mirror. There was a scatter of oohs, the sound middle schoolers make when a teacher says a swear by accident. Lila's face didn't move. Kian's mouth did a small private curl that made me want, briefly and wildly, to become a person who throws drinks. I didn't. I sipped water like it was proof of something. The DJ, a scientist of human error, cued a track designed to make people touch each other. Lila stood up. Kian stood up. The room stood back. I let it happen like it wasn't happening to me. Like it was a play I didn't know the ending to even though I'd written it in my head 100 times. David squeezed my knee under the table in a gesture so paternal it almost made me laugh. At some point, I ended up at the bar because sometimes you have to give your hands a task, or they will draft you into a worse one. The bartender set a soda down in front of me without asking, which is a polite way to say I'm watching you not ruin your life. I liked him. You're Arman, right? A voice said near my shoulder. It belonged to a girl with an undercut and a hoop in her ear and paint under her nails. One of Lila's friends. The one who had excellent taste in music and terrible taste in drama. I am many things, I said. Tonight I am Arman. She smiled crookedly. She's not as sure as she looks. Of me. Of herself. She tipped her chin toward the dance floor where Lila and Kian were manufacturing a memory. When people make public art out of private truth that fast, it's because they're terrified someone won't applaud. Are you asking me to applaud? I'm asking if you're going to burn down your acceptance letter to make a point. No, I said. My points don't need fire. They need mornings. She clinked her glass against my soda. Then tomorrow, do something morning-ish. Haircut, shoes without paint, a photo your mom will post without crying. I wanted to say that my mother cried at sunsets and dog videos and once at a particularly symmetrical staircase, but I nodded. The girl with the undercut had the gift of saying things like they had already happened. Later, in the alley, while David argued with a parking machine like it insulted his grandmother, I felt my phone buzz again. I didn't look. I put my hands in my jacket pockets and felt the folded corner of a paper I had carried for months. An old map of the museum district. Edges gone soft, the route my father and I had taken the last day. He was well enough to walk as far as he wanted. I pulled it out. The streetlight made it look like a treasure I was too stupid to bury. I traced the line to the design building with my finger. I thought about skylights. I thought about rooms built for voices quieter than the world. I thought about what a future is. A thing you walk toward without a witness. David honked triumphantly at the parking machine, and then at me. Come on, man. Let's go be idiots at noodles. I promise not to say anything about your jaw for 15 minutes. We ate noodles that tasted like salt and relief. He made obscene jokes about professors we didn't have yet. I laughed like a person doing a good impression of a happier version of himself and felt, for a few breaths at a time, like the impression was the honest one. On the way home, he made me stand under the fluorescent lights of a convenience store while he took a photo of me pretending to read the back of a packet of chips. For science, he said. For your thirst trap, I said. Same thing, he said and winked at the cashier, who rolled her eyes in a way that meant she enjoyed us despite herself. The photo ended up in our small class chat an hour later without my consent, but with my reluctant blessing. People said I looked like I'd slept. They said the word vibe in ways that made me both proud and allergic. Lila did not comment. Kian did briefly with a single dot. The dot meant I saw you. I did not reply. Not everything deserves a sequel. That night, I slept through my alarm and woke with my cheek creased by the map. When I turned my phone on, there were missed calls with unfamiliar names. One was Lila's mother. The voicemail was careful. Arman, Beta, if you speak to her, tell her not to be foolish. She is heated. You young people think everything is a test. Life is not a game. Eat, sleep, be kind. I sat with that a while and let the ache of it spread out and then fade. I texted my mom I'll be at school by 11 and she sent back, wear a scarf, which is how she says I love you in winter. At the registrar, the woman behind the glass took my ID and my future and stapled them together. Congratulations, she said without looking up, which is how bureaucrats bless you. I stepped out into the courtyard and tilted my face into the pale afternoon sun like a lizard. My phone buzzed again. I considered hurling it into the ornamental pond and then answered because I am weak in consistent ways. Arman, Lila said, and her voice had that hoarse edge that meant she had cried or drunk or both. I'm outside your building. Pastries. Why? Because I know you. Sugar first. Then apologies. I'm not hungry. Then be polite. The old command in the old tone. I recognized it the way a knee recognizes a reflex hammer. I have class, I lied. 5 minutes. I made the mistake of saying nothing. Silence is a yes to some people. Fine, she said. I'm at the bench by the lion statue. The lion statue is stupid and beloved. It has a scarf in winter and sunglasses in summer, whether the administration wants it to or not. I walked toward it because I am not made of granite. Lila was there in a white coat that made her look like a fever dream. Hair down, eyes in full persuasion mode. The bag on the bench was from the shop that makes egg tarts like sin. I waited 30 minutes, she said, as if math were a moral argument. Here. She picked up a tart and tried to hand it to me. I did not take it. She shrugged and took a bite herself, which is how she says don't make me beg. You didn't answer last night, she said around pastry. You didn't pick up this morning. Are we 12? Is this punishment? No, I said. This is distance. She flinched like the word had teeth. We said we'd go together. To wherever. That was the deal. We were 12, I said. I almost smiled because my brain is an unhelpful echo chamber. We thought sunsets were promises, and not just very pretty physics. She swallowed, angry at the poetry as much as at me. You're going to Kaffa. Yes, why? Because it's where I can become the person I am when I'm not performing being yours. Her mouth went flat. So that's it. After everything. This is because of everything. She took a long breath. The air between us cooled. When she spoke again, her voice was a blade she'd learned to handle. You knew I changed for Kian, she said. Say it. I knew, I said. But that isn't why I didn't follow you. What then? It came out a challenge. I refused to meet it with the same weapon. I pulled my father's map from my pocket and unfolded it in the cold. He had circled a building in pencil, lightly, as if afraid to bruise the paper. I pointed. This, I said. I promised a dead man a kind of life. You're not the test I have to pass. Her eyes flicked to the paper and back to me. For a second, she was the girl in the plastic poncho again, rain in her mouth, laughing like the world was a dare. Then the present reasserted itself like gravity. You'll be lonely, she said, as if it were a wish and a warning. I am already lonely, I said, and found it didn't scare me. She looked like she might throw the pastry at my head, and then remembered she liked pastries. She set the bag down, wiped her fingers, and lifted her chin in the old way. Registration banquet, she said briskly, as if we were rewriting a calendar and not a life. Our parents booked it together, remember? 7 p.m. Saturday, don't be dramatic. Wear something not black. I won't be there, I said. She laughed, sharp enough to cut cloth. You will, I didn't answer. Behind her, the lion statue wore a knitted hat with ears. A physics major took a photo of it like it was a friend he was leaving. The sky did its enormous, indifferent blue. "Goodbye, Lila," I said. She opened her mouth, closed it, and then said something true by accident. "I was so sure," she whispered. "About us." "I was sure about Light," I said. "It doesn't need us to clap." She nodded once, as if she'd file that line under reasons to hate me. She picked up the bag, put it down, and left it, because she knows me well enough to know I will not throw away an egg tart, even if it came wrapped in a complicated history. When she walked away, she didn't look back, which is her religion. I didn't either, which is mine. I ate the egg tart sitting on the bench with the lion because love is complicated and pastry is not. That night, my mom drove me to the hospital. Grandpa had frightened us all in the way old men do when they play with the thin door between worlds. He steadied when I arrived, as if my hand on the bedrail had weight. I told him I'd signed. He nodded. Sleep fluttered over his eyes like a bird considering a branch. In the hallway, under bad art, my mother squeezed my shoulder. "Whatever this girl did," she said without asking for details, "don't let it decide the shape of your hands." "I won't," I said, and believed myself. When I left the hospital, the city had put on its cheap jewelry. I walked home through it. At the crosswalk, a notification pinged. Our class chat was full of photos of bowls and toasts and the kind of shouting you do when you're trying to fill a silence that has your name on it. I thought about replying with a photo of my grandfather's hand in mine. I didn't. Not everything is for the room. At my building, a taxi door slammed. Lila's silhouette stood under the awning. Hair a mess, coat wrong for the temperature, stubbornness as warm as a bad blanket. "Don't," I said, because the word had become a bridge between us. "Say you'll come Saturday," she said. "Then I'll go home." "No." "Say you'll check South City one more time. For me." "No." "Say my name like you used to." I didn't. I went inside, and because I am not quite the person I want to be yet, I listened at my own door for a minute before I went upstairs. I heard nothing. I hoped she'd taken a car home. I hoped she'd stood in the cold a reasonable amount of time for a person with pride. I hoped too many things that weren't my business to hope. In my room, the folder waited. The map waited. The future, rude and patient, waited too. I slept with the light on. In the morning, there was a photo in the class chat of a dorm gate somewhere in Shanghai, wet with rain, a white coat under it like a ghost. No caption, no faces, just the shape of a decision in bad weather. I closed the app. I opened a new canvas. I drew a skylight. I drew a room where the light arrives and does its work without asking anyone to clap. When I left Beijing, the air still carried her perfume. Mom said it was just winter smog and diesel from the buses, but I knew what I was smelling. A memory that refused to evaporate. I told her I needed a break before university started. She called Uncle in Sea City, booked the flight, packed my sketchbook, and said, "Breathe salt for a while." So I did. Sea City didn't roar. It hummed. The ocean was an old blue typewriter constantly rewriting its mood. My uncle grilled squid on the rooftop and said nothing about Lila or Makoto. He just handed me a beer and nodded toward the horizon. "Out there," he said. "Nobody cares who unfollowed who." For the first time in months, I laughed without tasting iron. Days blurred into small, warm rituals. Sunrise jogs along the pier, sketching rusted boats, helping my cousin mod motorcycles. My hands smelled of oil instead of charcoal. Somewhere between the grease and sea breeze, I began to look like someone I hadn't met yet. One evening, my cousin shoved a jacket at me. "Photo," he said. "New Arman drop." He snapped me leaning against a vintage bike, light slicing across my jawline, hair shorter than it had ever been. He uploaded it to our class chat before I could object. The explosion was instant. David, holy, bro turned into concept art. Someone, glow up speedrun? Another. Even live shots hit harder. Lila didn't comment. Makoto's friend dropped a snide line about Photoshop. David clapped back with the raw clip. Silence followed. For the first time, the noise wasn't about them. It was about me. I smiled. Small, private, dangerous. That night, I posted one photo myself. Sea breeze, plus grilled squid. Perfection. 10 minutes later, a missed call from a number I knew too well. Then another. Then a text. "Lila, we're boarding. You're really in Sea City?" Me. "Yeah, Lila. Stop joking. Your mom said you're with your cousin. Come to the airport. Tickets booked." Me. "Not coming." Lila. "Don't regret this." I didn't. Regret was a currency I'd stopped accepting. Days folded into salt and paint. I filled a new sketchbook, docs, waves, people with open faces. I mailed Mom a page, proof of healing in progress. She replied with heart emojis and a photo of Grandpa smiling in recovery. Sometimes, late at night, I caught myself opening old chats and then closing them before the typing cursor appeared. That small restraint felt like a medal. Lila's trip photos surfaced on mutual feeds. Desert sunsets, cave murals, sandstorm smiles. In every 9-grid post, she stood beside Makoto. Her captions were breezy, warm light, warm hearts. My chest ached for 5 seconds at a time, then less. Pain has an expiration date if you let air in. My cousin dragged me out to a car show. Under the metallic lights, someone played a remix of Blue Lantern Nights. Funny how even new songs borrow ghosts. A girl asked if I was a model. I said, no, just a survivor. She laughed like that was the right answer. One morning, Uncle handed me a letter with the CAFA emblem. Accepted. Department of Design. My name printed cleanly beneath the seal. I took it to the pier, held it against the wind, and whispered, Dad, we made it. The tide roared like applause. Beijing greeted me with sharp light and old ghosts. At baggage claim, the universe decided to be cinematic. Lila and her group walked out from the opposite gate. She froze mid-step. Makoto looked caught between smirk and apology. I looked tired. Arman? She said, like the word tasted unfamiliar. You look different. Thanks, I said. So do perspectives. I wheeled my suitcase past them, straight to the exit where Mom was waving. Behind me, Lila called my name once more, soft, uncertain. I didn't turn. Some stories only work in flashbacks. Grandpa's heart had scared us, but stabilized. Hospital corridors smelled like disinfectant and redemption. When I told him about Kafa, his eyes watered. He squeezed my hand with the strength of every design he'd left. Unfinished. Build something that outlives. You, he whispered. I will. And I meant it. Lila's family still insisted on a joint celebration banquet. I didn't go. I spent that night sketching Grandpa asleep, light from the monitors painting his face in gentle grids. Around 10 p.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I knew who it was before answering. Arman. Her voice trembled with a cocktail of anger and nostalgia. You didn't come. I told you I wouldn't. 18 years of friendship, just deleted? No, I said quietly. Archived. She exhaled like a storm breaking glass. You've changed. That's the point. Before she could speak again, a nurse passed, murmuring, He's resting now. I hung up. The next morning, sunlight poured through the ICU window in strips like music bars. I sketched the pattern, light doing its work, quiet, exact. A notification broke the calm. A voicemail from Lila's mom, voice trembling. Beta, she's unwell. High fever. Says she wants to retake exams. Go to Beijing, please. Just talk to her. I deleted the message before temptation could translate into action. People heal on their own timelines. Mine had reached daylight. Semester began with chaos. Boxes, paint stains, laughter that didn't sting. Kafa felt like breathing inside architecture. My dorm mates were loud northerners who called me the calm guy and stole my noodles. Week 2, during an exhibition prep, a girl from sculpture approached me. Short hair, smudge of clay on her cheek. I'm Anna, she said. You helped me carry planks last week. She handed me a small roll of paper. Inside, a sketch of me, bent over a model, focus carved into graphite. I draw people who look like they're rebuilding, she said shyly. Coffee sometime? I nodded. Sure, but fair warning, my rebuild's still under construction. She smiled. So is every masterpiece. That evening the dorm gate buzzed. Rain hammered the street like applause no one wanted to end. Through the blur, a figure in white stood clutching a suitcase. Lila. I froze in the doorway. Anna's laughter echoed faintly from upstairs. Warm, real. Arman, Lila called, rain threading her voice. I didn't come for pity. I came to ask why. I walked closer until the water soaked my shoes. Why I didn't follow, I said. Because following isn't love. It's orbit. She shook her head. You could have told me about your father. About why Kafa mattered. I tried, I said softly. But you were too busy adjusting someone else's brushstrokes. Her eyes glimmered, half rain, half regret. I thought I knew you. You knew the version built around you. Lightning flashed. For a heartbeat we were kids again, paint-stained, hopeful, unbroken. Then the thunder came and time caught up. Go home, Lila, I said. Warm light suits you. She stepped back. You really moved on? I didn't answer. The silence was proof enough. She laughed once, small and cracked. I was so sure. I'm glad one of us isn't anymore. She stood there until the rain softened, then turned, dragging her suitcase through puddles that swallowed her reflection. I watched until she became a blur, then nothing. Later that night, Anna texted, "Storm cleared. Want to sketch the reflections?" I grabbed my pencil and went. We sat under the courtyard awning, sketching the wet stones. She hummed while drawing, and something in her quiet steadiness felt like home I didn't have to earn. When I looked up, the clouds had torn open, stars scattered like spilled chalk. I thought of Dad, of Grandpa, of all the light that never demanded applause. Then I thought of Lila, somewhere under another sky, learning her own silence. I whispered the line I'd written months ago in that unsent email. She had my password, she never had my purpose, and this time it didn't hurt.